I feel like there's already something kind of special about a movie that is largely about grief being made as an act of grieving. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I'm a little bit late. I'm actually not that late. It hasn't even been out a week. But, well, I say that at time of recording. I'll probably get this up. It'll have been out a week. Anyways, I had a busy weekend. So, obviously, this is the follow-up to Black Panther, and also dealing with the fact that Chadwick Boseman, who played T'Challa, tragically passed away at a far, far, far too young age. And the decision was made to not recast and instead have the character pass on as well. Now, I don't really want to wade into that debate. My feelings way back when, within the first few months of us having heard of Boseman's passing, were that he shouldn't be recast. I actually could be convinced either way. At this point, I've seen very compelling arguments making either point. However, I do understand why the filmmakers did what they did, because this is made by the same cast and crew predominantly of the previous film. So unless you were going to get probably all new creative people involved, Ryan Coogler being the big one, this is probably what it had to be. He's been pretty upfront about the fact that if he was going to make this, it had to be his way of grieving for his friend. And if it was going to be anything else, he wouldn't be the one who would make it. So it kind of was a situation where, yes, T'Challa could have been recast and we could have moved forward. And again, there are arguments to be made in favor of doing that. But it would have happened not with this creative team. And given how bold the artistic vision of the first Black Panther was, that might have just compounded everything and made everything worse. So yeah, I get why the decision that was made was in fact what was made. I'm not articulating myself well today, but this was a movie that I enjoyed as I watched it. And I think it handled a lot of its themes very, very well. The performances are good. Some of them are phenomenal. And it manages to continue the strong visual language of the previous film, which has always been one of Marvel's better looking films. There are things about it that make it far less likely that I'm going to be revisiting it with the same kind of eagerness that I did with the original Black Panther. Part of it has to do with just the fact that it is an inherently sad movie, but also its length. I don't think its length is actually a problem for what it is as a piece of art. 2 hours, 40 minutes, it's a long dang movie. But for properly processing the loss and also doing justice to the story that it's telling, yeah, it's a reasonable amount of time. And aside from one subplot, which if you added it all up, probably only amounted to 10 minutes tops, there isn't really a lot of fat on this. That one subplot, for the record, has to do with the stuff revolving around Martin Freeman's character, his agent character, and some stuff that is blatantly just set up for things to happen later. You could have ejected that, but it wouldn't have trimmed it down that much. And aside from that, which is still relatively enjoyable, all things considered, aside from that, everything that's here really should be here and at the pace that it should be. Rushing it any more than it is in terms of dealing with the loss of in-universe T'Challa, and then, introducing Namor and introducing his culture, his background, the appropriate amount of time was taken with that, because to tighten any of that up, you could have theoretically spent less time fleshing those things out, but then a lot of the themes would have fallen flat because it wouldn't have been as fully rounded as it needed to be. And as it managed to be in the first film, part of why Killmonger was such a great villain in that movie was because they took the time to properly flesh him out. And that is done similarly here. I do have a slight odd nitpick about the pronunciation of Namor's name. I am going to pronounce it that way because that's how he pronounces it. It's weird to me that everybody who isn't him or the people from his nation say Namor. And the reason that's weird is it's not like the Wakandans first found the name like written or like it was some ancient story where it had been mispronounced. Like they first find out about him when he introduces himself as Namor, and they immediately start referring to him as Namor. I don't know if it's meant to be like an accent thing, except it's not a completely authentic accent. It's a slightly modified accent for an original Wakandan language. So I don't know. That just jumped out at me. That it kept happening throughout the film, hearing the same name pronounced in different ways, and the people who are pronouncing it differently from Namor himself first heard it from him pronounced the way he says it, yet they don't say it that way. I don't know. I don't mean to get hung up on that. It's not a problem. It kept coming up. So it kind of bugged me a little bit. I do think that in terms of building a parallel situation between Namor as a threat and as a villain and the heroes, they maybe did a few more things to make them very much parallel to each other than was necessary. I can't really get into specifics about that without getting into spoilers, so we'll hold off on that thought. I do think the visualization of his people, his land, his kingdom is really well done. I like the Mesoamerican aesthetic that they went with. I like how it is explained and quantified. This is a random thing. Funnily, this came up in the comments on the video I did about Fat Thor. That video can be found there. People noted that like he is not the dehydrated, tight skin over bare muscle that a lot of the Marvel folks usually are, and he shouldn't be. He lives in the water, for crying out loud. But like he's real good in the part. He looks good in the part. Riri Williams gets introduced here. I liked her a lot. I had a lot of fun with her. I'll be really interested to see her series. Like, I was kind of curious anyways. I don't know a ton about Riri other than like just Wikipedia style knowledge. I haven't really read her in the comics, but yeah, she was fun. I'm looking forward to more with her, that because I know that they've got the Ironheart series planned for down the line. So I'm very much on board with that. The other thing I want to bring up about Namor and his people is the early part of the film when they're first being introduced. They are incredibly well filmed and presented and directed in terms of making them be a threat, because it's not an easy thing to take a group of people that, you know, are more or less humans. They're just in the water and they're using spears and make them threatening to our current era, much less the technological degree that the MCU deals with. That's not an easy thing to make them seem threatening and intimidating. And it does a lot of legwork. Like, they are handled almost like horror movie villains initially in terms of the way they attack and the way they are shot and presented and how long it's held off you getting a really good look at them. It's very effective. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I think for me, the true performance standout comes from Angela Bassett as Ramonda. She is astonishing in this movie. Like, everybody's good. And I kind of like that this is a very female-led movie. And I don't just mean that like as a general thing. I mean, it makes so much sense given the previous film, because the previous film had T'Challa basically as the center point of all of these really strong female characters. His sister, his mother, Okoye, the entire Dora Milaje, Nokia, all these really strong, really powerful, really well-developed women in his life. So if he's not there, it makes sense to just center the story on them and not do the worst possible thing you could have done, which is to try and insert a new male character to be the T'Challa in that dynamic, rather than just deal with the fact that he's not there, but they do what they can to move forward. That said, we do also have M'Baku back. Winston Duke is so good in this part. I love him so much. Every second he was on screen, I had a big smile on my face. But that's just raw enjoyment. In terms of the power of the performance, Angela Bassett takes it for me. And again, like, there's plenty of strong performances in this. But there's a couple of scenes. There's one early on where she's sort of speaking as the representative of her country to like the United Nations effectively. And then there's one later where she has a kind of a confrontation with Okoye, and dang, I don't hold out hope that this will get anything other than technical nominations for things like costumes and production design and whatnot, which it probably should get. But if it was going to get any acting nominations, Angela Bassett, please. Please. And overall, like, it is very good, but kind of like what I said at the beginning in terms of its length, at 2 hours and 40 minutes and being as much dealing with the grieving process as it is, it does make sense, but it does make it something that, well, it makes it almost a bit more like those big, long kind of event films that are important, powerful, but aren't necessarily something that you just put on to watch again. So when I say I'm less eager to pop it in again as the first one, I don't think that's actually necessarily a knock on the film itself, as it is just a reality of what kind of product it is and what it's doing. Overall, like, I don't think it's as strong as the first one, but it's not, considering that it lost its lead, it's not a massive drop-off. It's a worthy successor. I don't think it's as good, but it is still very good. So I do have a couple of spoiler things I do want to talk about. So that was your spoiler-free review. Now I am going to be talking spoilers. You have been warned. So what I said before about them doing probably one or two more things than was necessary to make Namor a parallel to the main characters, I was mainly referring to Shuri, who does, as expected, end up being the one to take up the Black Panther mantle. And they do a lot of work to make Namor a parallel to Shuri, to do kind of the dark mirror thing. And I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I do think they went a little too far with it. The big thing is, honestly, I don't think it was necessary to kill Ramonda. I think having her be injured and wounded and have Shuri fearing for her life and still stoking that same anger, that, yeah, sure, but like, she's already in grief. She's already in mourning. That initial anger already exists because of the loss of T'Challa. So it felt, honestly, a little bit like overkill to have her flatly lose her mother as well. Now, granted, it happens late in the film, so like Ramonda still gets plenty of time to shine, but like, it kind of feels like it's there primarily just because Namor's mother also died, and that also shaped a big part of his ruthlessness, which I'm really glad they captured, because that's about the one consistency with Namor as a character. Whether he's being written as a villain, an anti-hero, or whatever, he's a ruthless person, and that is well captured here. But I feel like the decision to kill Ramonda was largely just, well, we have to make as many direct parallels between Shuri and Namor as possible. And I don't think he did. It doesn't quite, but it walks right up to the line of, you're not trusting your audience enough. There are enough parallels here. There are more than enough parallels here. You don't need that extra one to literally give them the same dead mother revenge thing. So, yeah, it's not bad. It doesn't sink it. It's a bit of a British phrase. I'm hoping I'm using it right. They're over-egging the pudding just a little bit with that, I think. But like, my complaints are relatively minor. The part with Martin Freeman's character, it's pretty disposable. The pronunciation of the name, like, maybe a little bit too much direct paralleling. Oh, can't believe I almost forgot this. Great use of Killmonger. Holy crap. Like, I didn't know what to expect when Shuri went into the ancestral realm. I knew they weren't going to recreate Chadwick Boseman with CGI or anything else. They said they wouldn't do that, and everything I'd ever read from Ryan Coogler indicated that he would have found the idea offensive, and he never was going to do that. So I didn't know. I thought maybe they would just like show him from behind, but make it clear that is who she is seeing, but he's not talking to her. I thought maybe it would be that. Thought maybe it was her mother because she's dead at that point. But no, she walks around that throne and there's Killmonger. That was good. That was really good. And it was just a real clever, inventive use of him because narratively, it makes the most sense for her to see T'Challa, but logistically that couldn't happen. This is a really inventive thing to do instead, especially given that it's somebody that she wouldn't expect to see. She didn't have that deep a connection with, but she knows who this person was and knows what he did. And having him be the one to talk to her, yeah, that was really, really good. So this is a very well thought out and heartfelt film. You get that strong sense of grieving. I choked up at a number of parts of this right at the beginning, to be honest. And then again at the end, just showing old clips of Chadwick Boseman. And I like that they showed that the only time they actually showed any old clips, it was in a more comforting, in a more remember how good it was when he was here kind of way, rather than the early parts of the film, which if they'd used them there would have been much more look at what we lost. And I like that they held off even using old clips of him until the very end, where it could land as more of Shuri moving forward and embracing what she had instead of mourning what she'd lost, or at least instead of only mourning what she'd lost. That was really good. That was really good. It is a very good movie. And it's honestly probably a better movie than I feel I am able to articulate, given that I kind of left going, I did really enjoy that, but I didn't fall in love with it the way I fell in love with the first one. But I don't think that's any fault of the film. I think I just miss Chadwick Boseman too much, and that's not the movie's fault. It's really good. Did you see it? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop your thoughts down in the comments, and let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills. Any amount you're able to contribute to that does help me out immensely, even if you can't. Like, share, subscribe are also a big assistant. Don't worry too much about that either, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. End credits, that means I need to shout out my top Patreon supporters. Robin Moore, Zupin Lutfula, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Loli, Becky Sparks, Renabilax the Poodle, Zach, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam RDL Taylor, Shay Lagourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. Thank you so much for your support. You can get your name in the credits too by checking out the rewards on the Patreon. You only tried to eat my earring once this time. That's much better.